Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Splatoon, specifically Splatoon 1. This required some dusting off of the Wii U and digging through my giant cord pile to find all the cords required to actually play the Wii U, which is a lot more than you would think. This game also requires that you play solely on the Wii U gamepad, so that's a whole other box of worms that I had to set up. But after all the drama of getting my Wii U up and ready, I finally got Splatoon booted up. I figured it was time I finally give this franchise a try, seeing how I own about 50 million Splatoon amiibo. Now, Splatoon is a third-person shooter, but instead of using real guns, you are using paint guns. They're kind of like water guns, but they shoot a bunch of paint. So it's like a kid-friendly kind of shooter. Now, first and foremost, Splatoon is a multiplayer franchise, and I tend to stay away from multiplayer games, but in this case, I made an exception because this is probably one of my last few chances to play the multiplayer in Splatoon once the Wii U inevitably goes offline. And I won't be able to play multiplayer for this game anymore. I'll have to go buy Splatoon 2 or 3 when that happens. Not to mention, I forgot about this, but the Wii U actually has free online multiplayer. You don't need to pay any kind of subscription service like you do for the Nintendo Switch, which was a nice reminder. I wish that Nintendo Switch still had that feature. So as far as the controls go for Splatoon, it is a third-person shooter, and so you always have your aiming reticle open, and you're playing as these little inkling kind of kid tween creatures that can also turn into squids. And so the idea is you're squirting paint out of your gun, and there's different kinds of weapons. So there's like a more of like a sniper precision weapon, there's like a paint roller, there's like a bucket of paint. So you have a couple different options here, but the idea is you're getting paint all over the walls and the floor, and you want as much of your color of paint on the map as possible because that will severely increase your traversal when you are a squid, because when you're a squid, you can actually sink down into your color of paint, and this makes your movement much faster than when you're in your quote-unquote human form. Obviously, you can't be shooting or throw down any more paint, but when you're a squid, you can climb up walls and you can surf really fast through the paint, and this is also how you refill your ink cartridge to therefore fire more paint when you're in your human form. In addition to this, you also have like a little grenade bomb thing that you can throw, and then you have like a special weapon that charges up through a meter if you're doing really good, and this can act as like a paint bazooka thing, or like a shield, or there's many different loadouts here. So yes, as far as my multiplayer experiences went, as you can imagine, the multiplayer pool of people that you're playing with and against is vastly shrunk. Because most of these Splatoon players have moved on to Splatoon 2 or 3. And so the matchmaking here is very unfair, and I found that what would majorly affect if I won or lost these games is if I got paired up with the level 50 pro players who totally carried me or absolutely decimated me. And so it was kind of a good reminder on why I typically stay away from multiplayer games, because I don't like feeling like I'm really bad at games. But the idea is, as you are playing through these stages, you are leveling up, and they call this like your freshness meter, I guess is what they call it. And as you level up, you unlock new loadouts, new weapons. You also unlock currency to purchase different clothing to customize your character further. And it's what's cool about these clothings is they also have like little passive effects. Actually, I'm kind of mixed about this, because what if there's a piece of clothing that I think looks really cool, but the passive effect I don't really care about? And so maybe there's some way to like mix and match the passive effects. I'm not sure on that front. The stages also are on a rotating basis, so anytime you log in to Splatoon, you have to look at this big TV in the central hub, and that's where you will be greeted by the Squid sisters, Callie and Marie, and they'll just maybe have the little banter at first and just say these are the current stages that you can play through, the current game modes that you can play. I am a little miffed that it requires you to watch this little announcement every time you log into the game, because the Wii U is not like the Switch that just goes into sleep mode. You actually have to like boot up the Wii U every time you want to play it and get signed into the main menu, and then you have to watch this presentation. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it takes about 2 or 3 minutes to actually get going and playing the actual game. But after you watch this announcement, this is where you go into the major hub. This is where you can see like other players standing around and check out their gear and their stats, and this is where you can go to the shops and buy different gear. And this is also where you can go to the single player mode. Yes, this game does have a single player mode, but again, the focus is majorly on multiplayer. I did play through all of the single player. It definitely was there to boost up my confidence after I got decimated in multiplayer matches. And the idea of this game, this single player mode, is that these Octorians stole all of the Zapfish from our major city, and the Zapfish basically power up our city. They provide the electricity, and so you're navigating to all these different stages. I think there's about 30 of them, and you are doing some platforming and some shooting. It's not anywhere as difficult as multiplayer mode, and I do like the ideas here with the platforming, because you have to like turn into squids and climb up the walls, and then they have a bunch of unique features like zip lines that you can go across, or sponges that soak up your paint and they grow in size as you squirt them, and then they shrink in size as the enemy squirts them. As far as the combat goes, it is fairly easy. You just fight these little tentacle looking things that they fire really slow shots, so they're easy to move out of the way. And if you are a squid and you sink down into your own color paint, they basically can't find you. Unlike multiplayer game, you can still get damaged when you're in a squid form. But I like how each one of these stages just has like a different central focus around it, whether it's platforming around these sponges, or there's like moving levers that you have to navigate around, or some are just purely combat based. But I do like the variety in terms of levels, and I actually like the overworld level selection, where you go to I think there's about 5 different islands that have about 5 different stages in them, and once you defeat all the stages and rescue all the Zapfish from each of those stages, then you fight a boss, and the bosses, they're pretty fun. There's usually like some kind of technique that you want to do, like create a giant pool of paint for this rolling ball to sink into, or there's like a spinning cube that you have to like climb up and get the tentacle on the top of it. So there is some strategy. It's not as mindless as some shooters can be. There's also these sunken scrolls hidden in each one of these levels if you spend some time exploring, and I'm not sure mechanically if these scrolls do anything in-game, but they do kind of reveal a little bit about the lore of Splatoon. I guess Splatoon takes place like 12,000 years in the future from now, because you see like relics of today's time. And then you can also collect resources to upgrade your gear. Nothing too in-depth here, but just things like increases your ink storage capacity, or like upgrades your grenades, your gun, that kind of thing. You do only use the regular little machine gun as far as the weapons go in this game, but I was experimenting with all the Splatoon amiibos that I have. The newer ones aren't going to work with this game, obviously, but like the ones that came out alongside this game, apparently what they unlock is they allow you to play through some of these stages using a different weapon, and add additional challenges, usually like a time limit that you have to beat the level within. And this unlocks different like cosmetics and gives you more coins to spend on gear, that kind of thing. So it's a cool little feature, nothing that I really played around with. I just kind of played through the main story player mode with this little machine gun. Consequently, that was the weapon that I chose to use in multiplayer. I tried a couple different weapons, and I think I just got so used to using the machine gun, I was most familiar with it, that was where I found the most success in multiplayer. But yeah, it is a fairly short single player mode. I think it's mostly there to get you familiarized with the mechanics and the controls, because the controls do take a little bit to get used to. You really want to utilize the gyro controls in your gamepad, because I don't know, that's just what I hear online, that all the pros use the gyro. You do not want to turn that off. You want to get used to using the gyro to aim, in addition to using the right analog stick. It's more like the right analog stick is for doing your major movements, like turning around, and then you use the gyro to fine-tune where you want to aim your reticle. And by the end of the game, I got pretty good. Not enough to do well in multiplayer, but enough to get by in the single-player mode just fine. Overall, I could see if you were like really into multiplayer shooter games, this is definitely a fresh take in terms of like being able to turn into squids and climb on the walls and stuff like that, and it not actually being like a shooter with guns, but like more like paint guns. It's a fresh take and it's fun, and even though I didn't do well in multiplayer, I could still feel like I was participating just by like painting the stage with my color in order to help my pro players who were on my team. And so even if you're bad at shooters, you can still feel like you're actively helping out your team and being more on the defensive line. And while the single player was short and pretty simple, I think that there's a lot of potential here, and I am definitely keeping my eye on Splatoon 2 or 3 because I'm interested in seeing what's been changed or added in those games. I mean, Splatoon 3 just got a new DLC that came out maybe a month or two ago. That sounds pretty interesting. And so if there's more single-player content, I think that this game is up my alley. Overall, I'm going to give this game a 3 out of 5, just basing it on my multiplayer experience and the single player. I think it actually has a lot to offer here, despite me usually not liking these multiplayer competitive games. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Splatoon, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!